Daniel Price had planned for a quiet morning, the kind when nothing surprising happens and the world feels easy for a little while. He had driven to the small coastal cafe in Portland, Maine, hoping the fresh air and the smell of roasted coffee would calm the heaviness in his mind. Work had been stressful. Life felt dull. And he needed a moment to breathe without expectations, without noise, without anyone asking him to be something he wasn't sure he could be. He stepped inside the cafe, ordered his usual black coffee, and chose the corner table where he could look out at the ocean. The morning light stretched across the window, soft and gold, making the waves glow. For a few minutes, he felt almost peaceful. Then the door opened, the bell chimed, and everything in him tightened. Emily Carter walked in. The moment Daniel saw her, his breath caught not because she looked dramatic or extraordinary, but because she looked familiar in a way he wasn't ready for. Years had passed since he last saw her, yet it felt like time folded in half. She was older now, her hair pulled loosely behind her shoulders, her posture steadier, her smile softer. But she still had that natural warmth he remembered, the kind that made people feel safe just by standing near her. Daniel froze. He hadn't expected this, not today, not in this quiet corner of Maine. He had come here to forget the things that made him feel stuck. She had always been part of the things he tried not to think about, feelings he never faced, mistakes he never corrected, emotions he hid because he thought silence was simpler. Emily didn't see him right away. She ordered her drink, chatting politely with the barista, her hand brushing her coat as she waited. Daniel watched her closely, almost afraid she would look in his direction. He wasn't sure what he would do if she did. Part of him wanted to get up and leave. Another part wanted to stay exactly where he was. When she finally turned around, their eyes met. It was less than a second, but it hit Daniel harder than he expected. Her expression changed, surprise first, then confusion, then something gentler. She blinked as if trying to confirm it was really him. Daniel straightened, pretending to look calm, though something in his chest stirred in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. Emily hesitated, almost like she was debating whether to walk over. Then she did. With each step she took, Daniel's heart beat faster. The cafe suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker, the ocean quieter. Everything narrowed to the space between them. "Daniel," she said, voice soft but steady. He forced himself to look up. "Hi, Emily. You? Wow, it's been a long time." She let out a nervous laugh, not dramatic, just human. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Same," Daniel replied. He wished he sounded more confident, but his voice carried more honesty than he planned. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't cold, just uncertain. There were too many memories between them, conversations that stopped too soon, moments that never became anything, feelings that stayed unspoken because he didn't know how to handle them back then. Emily took a small breath. "Do you mind if I sit for a minute?" He shook his head. "No, go ahead." She sat across from him, placing her warm drink on the table. Up close, Daniel noticed details he hadn't seen from afar: slight tiredness in her eyes, a calm kind of maturity, a softness shaped by time and things she must have gone through. "How have you been?" she asked. Daniel shrugged lightly. "Working a lot, trying to keep up with life." It was the truth, just not the full truth. He didn't know how to say the rest. "What about you?" "I moved back temporarily," Emily said. "My sister needed help for a while, so here I am." Daniel nodded. He didn't know if he should ask about her life, her relationships, the things he missed. He didn't want to sound like he cared too much, though he did. Emily looked around the cafe, then back at him. "It's strange seeing you here. Brings back a lot." He swallowed. "Yeah, Same. She studied him for a moment, not in a judging way. More like she was trying to read something she forgot. You look different, she said quietly. More serious. He laughed softly. Life does that to people, I guess. She smiled, but it didn't fully reach her eyes. I used to wonder how you were doing. Daniel felt something tighten inside him. There was a time she used to care deeply, and he had walked away instead of staying. He had reasons back then: fear, confusion, timing, but none of them felt good now. The quiet between them grew heavier, but not uncomfortable. It felt like a door opening slowly, letting the past slip back into the present. Emily tapped her cup gently. A nervous gesture, he remembered. It's good to see you again, Daniel. He looked at her, really looked. It's good to see you too. But beneath those simple words, a question rose inside him, unavoidable, unsettling. Was this unexpected moment just coincidence, or the beginning of something he was finally ready to face? And that question stayed with him long after she smiled at him. Long after the waves crashed outside the window. Long after he realized that one morning, one meeting, could shift everything he thought he had under control. Because without planning it, without wanting it, without expecting it, Emily had stepped back into his life. And nothing felt the same anymore. Daniel didn't expect to see Emily again so soon. But 2 days later she walked into the same cafe. This time she spotted him first. There was a quick hesitation in her eyes, the kind that happens when someone isn't sure if they should interrupt. But then she offered a small smile and approached his table with the confidence of someone who refused to let awkwardness win. Looks like we both like early mornings, she said. Placing her drink down, Daniel nodded. Or maybe the town is just too small. They shared a light laugh, but beneath it there was tension unspoken, fragile, ready to surface if either of them took one wrong step. Emily sat across from him again, adjusting her scarf, settling into the moment as if she wanted to understand something he wasn't sure he could explain. Their conversation started simple. Weather, work, how quickly the town changed. But soon, the small talk peeled away, revealing deeper things neither planned to share but somehow slipped out naturally. Emily talked about helping her sister, about feeling overwhelmed at times, about missing her old life but needing this break to figure herself out. Daniel listened, noticing how her voice carried a quiet strength, even when she admitted her struggles. He told her about switching jobs twice in the last few years, about feeling unsure of what he wanted, about losing passion for things he once cared about. He didn't usually share this with anyone, but with Emily it came out without effort. You disappeared so suddenly back then, Emily said, her voice steady but soft. She wasn't accusing him. She sounded like someone finally acknowledging a truth she avoided for too long. Daniel's fingers tightened around his cup. I know, I didn't handle things well. Did something happen? She asked gently. He looked down, searching for words that didn't sound like excuses. I was overwhelmed. I thought stepping back was easier. Emily let out a slow breath, the kind that hides disappointment behind understanding. Easier for you, maybe, she murmured. Daniel felt the sting of that. She wasn't wrong. He had walked away years ago, not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to face the feelings he had. Emily had been bright, brave, open-hearted. He had been guarded, unsure, afraid of hurting her or himself. So he pulled away before the connection became something he couldn't control. I always wondered if I wasn't important enough, she admitted suddenly, almost like she regretted saying it as soon as it left her lips. Daniel looked up quickly. Emily, you were important. More than you know. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she watched him closely, as if trying to decide whether to believe him. The cafe grew louder around them, customers placing orders. Chairs moving, spoons clinking, but none of it touched the stillness between their table. Daniel felt exposed, as if she could see every thought he tried to bury. "Then why did you leave so suddenly?" she asked. He took a breath. "Because I was scared of wanting something I didn't know how to handle." Emily blinked. For the first time, her expression softened fully. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't anger either. It was recognition, quiet, bittersweet, honest. She looked down at her drink, circling the rim with her finger. "You know, I waited for you to say something back then. Anything. I didn't need a perfect plan. I just needed a sign that you cared." "I did care," he whispered. "I just didn't know how to show it." Another silence settled between them. Different from the first, heavier but necessary. Emily wasn't pushing him away, but she wasn't pretending nothing happened either. And for the first time, Daniel understood how much his silence had cost her. The cafe lights flickered slightly as a cloud passed outside. Emily leaned back, folding her hands together. "We're different people now," she said quietly. "Life changes you." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, it does. Do you ever think about how things could have been?" she asked suddenly. He didn't hesitate. "More than I should." Emily looked at him with eyes full of memories. Good ones, sad ones, unfinished ones. "I used to think we missed our chance," she said. Daniel felt his heartbeat shift. "Do you still think that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked out the window, watching the ocean move in slow, steady waves. Her silence wasn't rejection. It was caution. "People grow," she said after a moment. "But some old feelings don't disappear. They wait." "Mine waited too," Daniel admitted before he could stop himself. Emily turned toward him again. For the first time that morning, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. Not fear of him, but fear of what this conversation could lead to. They had already touched buried emotions, cracks in the past, wounds that had never fully healed, and a single wrong word could push them backward again. She breathed out slowly, gathering her thoughts. "We can talk about the past," she said, "but what matters now is what we do with it." Daniel felt those words settle deep inside him. He had spent years avoiding the truth. Years pretending he didn't care because caring felt too big, too risky. But now, with Emily sitting across from him again, her voice steady and her eyes honest, he felt something shift in him, small but undeniable. He didn't want to run anymore. Emily stood up first, wrapping her coat around her shoulders. "I should get going. My sister needs me." Daniel rose too, unsure of what he should say. "Emily," she paused, waiting. "Can we talk again?" he asked quietly. She smiled, small but real. "Maybe we should." And just like that, she left the cafe, leaving Daniel standing there with a mix of hope, fear, and something that felt dangerously close to a second chance. Because the truth was simple. Old feelings don't always fade. Sometimes they return stronger, asking for a choice you avoided once. And Daniel knew the next choice he made would change everything. The days after their cafe conversation moved faster than Daniel expected. He kept trying to convince himself that running into Emily was just coincidence, but the way she lingered in his thoughts told him otherwise. Every morning felt different now, lighter in some ways, heavier in others. He couldn't ignore how one unexpected meeting had shaken the routine he had built around. Avoiding old emotions. It wasn't long before they saw each other again. This time it was at the pier. Emily was standing near the railing, watching the water as the wind pushed her hair back. Daniel had planned to walk alone to clear his mind. But the moment he saw her, his quiet morning shifted. She noticed him almost instantly and smiled. It wasn't a dramatic moment. It was natural, calm, the kind of smile that said she didn't mind seeing him again. "Here for the view?" she asked as he walked up beside her. "I guess so," he said, though he wasn't sure if he meant the ocean or her. They didn't talk much at first. They just stood there, side by side, listening to the waves and the distant sounds of boats leaving the harbor. For a while, silence felt enough. Neither rushed, neither tried to force anything. Maybe that was what made the moment feel steady. Eventually, Emily spoke. "I've been thinking about our conversation." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Me too." "I realized something," she said, her eyes still on the water. "We were young. Neither of us knew how to handle real emotions back then. You shut down, and I expected too much too fast." Daniel considered her words. They were honest, but gentle. "Maybe we both needed time to grow up." "Probably," she said with a soft laugh. "Life has a way of teaching you things you didn't ask to learn." They started walking along the pier without discussing where they were going. It felt like the decision made itself. The morning sun was rising higher, warming the cold boards beneath their feet. Everything seemed simple, just two people trying to understand what had happened to them and what might come next. As they walked, Emily mentioned her new temporary job in town, how she was trying to help her sister while figuring out what she wanted for her own future. Daniel listened closely, admiring the quiet determination in her voice. "You sound stronger now," he said without thinking. Emily looked at him, surprised but not offended. "Stronger?" "Yeah," he said. "Not in a tough way. Just grounded. More sure of yourself." She smiled, almost shyly. "Life hasn't been easy these last few years. But I learned I can handle more than I thought." Daniel nodded, understanding more than he could express. He had also changed, become quieter, more thoughtful, less willing to pretend he had everything under control. They kept talking this time about lighter things. Movies they liked, places they visited, the funny way small towns carry old memories as if they're part of the air. Their conversation moved smoothly, like a river that knew its path. Daniel noticed how Emily's face lit up when she talked about things she loved. Emily noticed how carefully he listened, as if he didn't want to miss anything. After a while, they stopped at a small bench overlooking the shore. Emily sat first, pulling her jacket closer as the wind picked up. Daniel joined her, leaving just enough space to feel respectful but close enough to feel connected. "You know," Emily said quietly, "I didn't expect talking to you again to feel this easy." "Me neither," Daniel admitted. "I thought it would feel awkward." "But it doesn't," she said. "No," he agreed. "It doesn't." Emily leaned back, letting the sunlight warm her face. "It almost feels like we're getting another chance to know each other." Daniel felt that sentence hit deeper than she probably intended. "Do you want that?" he asked before he could stop himself. Emily didn't answer immediately. She looked at the waves, thinking. "I want to understand who you are now," she finally said. "Not who you were then. I want to see if we can talk without old fears getting in the way." Her honesty made something inside him soften. "I want that too." For the next week, seeing each other slowly became a habit. Not planned, but natural. Sometimes they bumped into each other at the cafe. Sometimes they ended up walking the same path along the coast. Sometimes Emily texted him about a funny moment with her niece. Or Daniel sent her a picture of the sunrise he knew she'd appreciate. Their connection grew quietly, no grand gestures. No dramatic decorations, just small, consistent moments that built trust piece by piece. Emily began sharing stories she never shared before. Daniel talked about things he usually kept buried. They were learning each other again, slowly and carefully. One evening, they walked along the shoreline after the sunset washed the sky in shades of pink and gold. The light was fading, but the air felt alive. "I used to think timing didn't matter," Emily said softly. "But maybe it does." Daniel glanced at her. "You think now is the right time?" "I think." She paused, choosing her words. "I think we're different enough to try again." and similar enough to still care. Daniel felt his heartbeat shift at her words. They weren't confessions, but they were close. Close enough to make him wonder what the next step should be, and whether he had the courage to take it. Emily stopped walking, facing the ocean. Daniel, I don't want to rush things. But I also don't want to pretend nothing is happening between us. He stepped beside her. Close but not touching. I don't want to pretend either. The wind brushed between them, carrying the scent of salt and possibility. The silence wasn't heavy, now it was warm, full of questions they were finally brave enough to ask. Emily looked at him, her eyes calm, honest, hopeful. Maybe we're both learning how to choose better this time. Daniel didn't look away. Maybe we are. And in that simple moment, he realized something was changing quietly, steadily, beautifully. Not because they forced it, but because life was offering them a second chance. A chance he wasn't sure he deserved. A chance he wasn't sure she trusted. But a chance both of them felt deeply, unmistakably was worth exploring. And for the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel afraid. He felt ready. The next few days moved quietly. But something deeper was growing between Daniel and Emily, something neither of them tried to label yet, but both clearly felt. Every conversation carried warmth. Every shared moment felt more meaningful than the last. And yet, beneath the growing closeness, there was a question Daniel kept avoiding. What happens when Emily leaves town? He knew her stay wasn't permanent. She had a life in Boston waiting for her. A job she loved. Friends she cared about. And here he was, letting himself fall back into the same feelings he once ran away from. The difference now was that he understood himself better. And he understood her better too. On a cold Saturday morning, Emily texted him. "Can we talk? At the pier?" Daniel felt a nervous shift in his stomach, but he went. He reached the pier early, the wind rushing against his coat, the sky heavy with clouds. Emily arrived a few minutes later, her hair tied loosely, her expression calm but serious. "Thanks for meeting me," she said. "Of course," he replied. "Everything okay?" She nodded slowly. "I got a call yesterday. My sister's doing better. She doesn't need me to stay as long anymore." Daniel felt the words sink into him. He tried to hide the disappointment rising in his chest. "So, you're leaving?" "Soon," she said gently. "Not tomorrow, but soon." He looked out at the water, pretending to focus on the waves. "That's good. For your sister. And for you." Emily stepped closer. "Daniel, I don't want to pretend this doesn't affect you." He didn't answer. He couldn't. He was afraid his voice would betray everything he felt. Emily continued softly. "These last weeks, they meant something to me. More than I expected." Daniel turned to her. "They meant something to me too." "Then we need to talk honestly," she said. "Because I don't want to leave confused about what this is." Her honesty pushed him to face the truth he'd avoided for years. "Emily, I care about you." "I always did." She held his gaze, her eyes gentle. "I know. But caring isn't the same as choosing." Daniel let the words sink in. She wasn't asking for promises or dramatic declarations. She wasn't asking him to follow her or move cities. She was asking him to decide if he wanted to keep letting life pass in fear, or finally choose something real. Emily sat on the bench facing the water, and Daniel joined her. For a long moment, neither spoke. The ocean moved calmly, as if waiting with them. "When you walked away back then," Emily said quietly, "I tried to understand. I told myself you weren't ready, and maybe I wasn't either. But now we're older, and we know the cost of silence." Daniel swallowed hard. "I hurt you. I healed," she said softly. "But that doesn't mean I forgot." He nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I don't want to repeat the past. Neither do I, she said. So we need to decide. Not perfectly. Not forever. Just honestly. Daniel really looked at her. The softness in her eyes. The steadiness. The quiet hope mixed with caution. She wasn't asking him to solve everything. She was asking him to stop running. He finally spoke. I don't want to lose this again. Emily's expression softened. Then what do you want, Daniel? He hesitated, but only for a moment. He was done hiding. I want to try. With you. Whatever that looks like. The air around them shifted, not dramatically, but gently, like something long overdue finally clicked into place. Emily's shoulders relaxed, her eyes warming. I want to try too, she said. But we have to be realistic. I live in Boston. You're here. I can visit, Daniel said quickly. We can figure out the rest. I'm not afraid of the distance. Emily gave a tiny smile. You used to be afraid of everything emotional. Now look at you. Daniel laughed softly. Yeah, life changes people. And you being here changed me. She looked down for a moment, touched by his words. Then maybe this time we won't run away from something good. The wind grew colder, and Emily slipped her hands into her pockets. Daniel noticed and instinctively offered her his scarf. She accepted it with a smile, small but full of unspoken emotion. As they stood to leave, Daniel felt lighter than he had in years, not because everything was solved, but because he no longer carried the fear of choosing wrong. He had made a choice finally. A real one. They walked back along the pier slowly, side by side. Emily didn't rush ahead. Daniel didn't stay behind. They moved together, steady, calm, hopeful. Near the entrance of the pier, she stopped. Daniel, I'm glad we found our way back to each other. Even if we didn't plan it. Me too, he said. Maybe timing really does matter. Maybe it does, she whispered. He wanted to reach for her hand, but he waited for her to make the first move. She looked at him, reading him the same way she used to years ago, only now she knew him better. Then she gently slid her hand into his. No tension.